Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for stopping by for another episode of Friday Reads, aka where I talk about all the books I read this week and or plan on reading this weekend. So I have to go in like a few minutes. So I have to multitask. I've been trying for the past couple of days to film a Friday Reads video, but it's just been very disruptive. So I'm going to try to multitask and do all this. All right, so the books that I read this week, I want to start by talking about Miranda July, all fours. So I ended up giving that book 4 stars. We follow this no-name 45-year-old woman who's jobless and whose sexual desires are not being met by her partner. At the beginning of the book, we see the symbology kind of like letting us know what to expect of her or her personality or her journey when she discusses the wobbliness of the table that's in her basement. I think one of the legs she was supposed to get fixed, but she never did. And so her table is uneven and unstable. And we follow her on this journey after she talks about how she was listening in on a conversation her husband had with some of her friends or their friends about this idea of parkers versus drivers. This inspires her to want to become a driver instead of a parker that her husband is accusing her, or she feels that her husband is accusing her of being. From there, she has this idea with the help of her husband to drive from LA all the way to New York. She got like $20,000 from a whiskey commercial. They used one of her lines from a long time ago, but they used it and they give her the money and she decides to use that money to go on this trip. What ends up happening is because deep down inside she really is a parker. She can't do the drive. So she makes it 26 minutes away from the house. She stops at a small town in Monrovia. And she meets this young man named Davey. They make eye contact. She thinks that there's something there. And then from that interaction, she unconsciously decides to rent a hotel. And because she's an artist at heart, she decides that the plain, dusty, crusty hotel room is not enough. Is not good enough. And so she decides to renovate this hotel, hiring Davey's wife to renovate this hotel, gives her the $20,000. And she essentially builds a nest for her and Davey. Now, they start to interact with each other. It's very intimate in other ways than going all the way. They hang out, they talk to each other, and they touch each other, but you wouldn't initially think of it as sexual, but it does feel very intimate to the point where it's received as a sexual experience. And so okay, this book is so funny. So they have these interactions and they start to feel some type they really start to fall for one another, because for Davey, he loves her work and he follows her on Instagram, and so she inspires him in a lot of ways that he's not able to receive inspiration from his own personal life. And for No Name, Davey invokes, or she at least feels like she can be fed the pleasure that she is seeking, especially at this time in her life where she feels like her husband doesn't necessarily fully accept her for who she is, and her personality is forced to be confined to one room in the basement. So it's like he's hiding her out, or he's trying to conform her, or he's trying to keep her in this Pandora box where just you and your weird ways can stay right there. And that's the small amount of freedom you can have. And at this point in her life, it seems as if it's all catching up to her and she feels like she's going to combust, kind of thing. And so with Davey, she's able to be her eccentric self and not have to feel like she's being judged. If anything, she feels validated and she feels fully accepted. So they spend about a week and a half with each other, where they're just just being weird. And that part I liked the most because there was a part where I was reading and like they were in the hotel and then hip hop music came on. Now Davy has expressed to No Name that he wants to be a dancer. And I thought it was so funny because at first she didn't think that he was good. But it turns out I guess he's like really good. But she's talking to him and like hip hop music comes on and I was just like, oh my gosh, please start dancing, like do some sort of like interpretation of like that shows some sort of like rendition of like how he feels for her or whatever, which ends up being the case. And I screamed so hard. I was like, yes, I was having such a good time. But then all good things must come to an end. After the week is over, they have to split. They have to go back to their normal lives. For Davy, it's hard at first, but he adjusts. But for No Name, it's really, really difficult for her to adjust. She wants that old thing back, and she doesn't want to go back to her normal life. And I think like this is going to be the theme for this episode. Like, what is normal? It's hard for her to adjust back to her normal life. And it's like she was able to get an idea of something and it thrilled her so much that she felt like she saw a glimpse of herself and she doesn't want to go back to her old ways. She wants to continue to explore this small glimpse of herself and see it to the end. Eventually what ends up happening is she introduces this idea of an open marriage to her husband, Harris. And for him, he's like, okay, fine, whatever. Like, if this is how you feel, like, then this is how you feel. If you're going to do weird dances in a janky hotel parking lot with a flannel and some grandma underwears, then you know what? Then go and be your eccentric self. I'm going to remain traditional, and I'm going to get me somebody who accepts me and who aligns with what I want, and you can go and live your messy life. And so that's what happens. Harris finds someone and they create their relationship, and then No Name starts to talk to other people and see like where she can get in, where she fits in. Now for No Name is more difficult for her because what she's looking for, and it kind of represents a bit of chaos, right? Because it's like there's no boundaries, there's no rules, there's no regulations. And so when you meet someone who is along with that, you end up getting hurt, which is what happens to her. She ends up getting hurt because she's dealing with this woman, and she's pretty much feeding back what she is wanting, right? This sexual freedom and this freedom to be fluid and be with whoever one's body desires at the moment. It's complicated for her because it's like she falls in love with this lady, but this lady who's also so-called like an artist or like an artist's muse, she is doing her job. She's being the muse in the moment, and No Name it's difficult for her to like accept that because she wants to then conform her to just being her partner. Even though she's like, all right, fine. So like maybe you can be with that person, but do you care about them more than you care about me? Like, am I better? Then it's just like, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, you can, but you know, expect to gain weight or something like that. But there's consequences. So it's like, it's really hard, but the whole idea is you hope that she can find something right in the midst of the chaos. One of the things that I want to talk about as far as like No Name, I just felt like what made her so enjoyable was the fact that she was just so self-centered, and she reminded me so much like a child, because children want what they want because they can want it, but they don't think that there's other people in the world that exist here. And so this idea of not having access to, or there being boundaries, or there being rules and laws and things that they would have to abide by, is very difficult for them to fathom. So when No Name tries to do this open source project where she brings essentially all of the people that she knows, pretty much her friends, to the hotel room that she renovated. She's trying to get them to open up and be like, you know, like, we're at this age, like, what exactly do you desire? Because she's at the point in her life where she wants to obtain all the things that she desires without any type of judgments. It doesn't matter like how things are in the world. Who cares? Like, it's like, I want what I want, and I feel inspired, and I want to revolutionize this act of doing anything and everything that I want, regardless of what anybody says. And of course, like, her friends are going to align with the things that she thinks or feels, because that's her circle. She doesn't do an open source to the general public. So of course this only further validates her stance. But the thing that was really funny to me was when she talks to her friends and they're talking about all the things that if they can have it their way, like, what would they want? What would they do? And then they open up and they say this. And then when push comes to shove, they're like, it's okay to want what you want, but you don't have to you don't have to obtain these things. It's okay to just live in this world and where there's rules and regulations. That's what fantasies are for. And that's okay. You don't have to live out your fantasies. Because here's the thing. If you end up doing stuff like that, if you are you're all accepting and you want to create a generation or a world where anyone can do whatever they want, right? Then you're left with the reality of the character Audra. Now, this is the part where it gets me so tight, because I was enjoying this book so much, but then we meet freaking Audra's nasty behind. And she tells No Name about her encounter with Davy when he was 15 years old and she was like 47. And instead of No Name telling Audra, that's gross. And even she says, if she wants to screw everybody in the world, right, she would exempt children. Children are exempt, but everyone else can get it. The cousins, the mamas, the uncles, the parents, which is seriously, even though eventually she's like, okay, that's kind of crazy. But it's this is what happens when you let the chaos open, when you open Pandora's box and you let anything fly and you act on instant emotions or instant crazy ideas. Imagine a world where that ends up being the case. Never mind. But anyways, even though I understand symbolically Davy represents youth, right? And the pleasures of youth and wanting to have it and wanting to feel good in that youthfulness and wanting to attain a bit of it. Audra has this conversation with No Name, and instead of No Name telling Audra okay, this is going too far, she is so desperate to have something of Davy that she literally masturbates to Audra, telling her encounter with Davy when he was 15 years old. That's pedophilia. That's disgusting. And that really pissed me off, and that really messed up my experience. That was so nasty. But then when I was like, let me watch You, Me, and Everyone We Know. I watched the movie again, and I was just like, there's that theme in there as well. There's a little kid in there that's talking to at the time he doesn't know who he's talking to, and obviously that represents I guess you can say, depending on where you stand, but the dangers of kids being on the internet. He's talking to someone and the person asks him, or they're talking about fantasy or whatever, and the little kid is talking to this person about wanting to share poop back and forth with each other forever. And it's the poop is being funneled from his backside to the person's backside, and they're exchanging it back and forth forever. I'm so annoyed with myself because I said last week that was one of my favorite movies growing up, and it was. I liked that movie when I was a teenager. Oh my god. Ugh! It really just makes me itch right now. But anyways, and that's essentially what happens in the book. No Name is sharing her bodily secretion with the old lady. She's taking some from her body and giving it to Audra. And obviously I know symbolically it represents how No Name is at this particular age in her life right now, where she's dealing with Audra, and she's getting to accept old age, but also to Audra at her old age, and she's not in her libido crashing down and her not being able to get moist down there, so she experiences dryness in her old age. And so Audra's desperation to want to feel that euphemism of pleasure and wanting to they're having to have this experience together. It symbolizes how No Name is extending herself, is helping a fellow woman by giving her secretion to help moisturize her so that she can come to. And it's supposed to be woman to woman, woman empowerment, woman help, sister to sister, like whatever. Whatever. Like, I would have been okay if like they weren't doing this to 15-year-old Davy's story. I get it. But come on now. And to sit here and talk about how his tool was full, like, well developed at that, like, oh my God. Anyways, so that whole thing really pissed me off. It really pissed me off. But other than everything else, like, I was okay with it, with the book. It was great. I enjoyed it. It was funny, and it kept me entertained the entire way, the way through, except for that portion. It kept me entertained, and it ended when it needed to end. And so I gave it 4 stars. It was a good book. Sorry, I'm watching like a camping video. I like to watch camping solo camps where people go out into the mountains or the woods or whatever, and they like have like a little tent or whatever the case may be, and then they're like just there camping. I feel like for me, when I'm done being a mom, and that's another thing too, because with this book, like it's discussed about feeling like you've sacrificed like a good portion of your life, a good portion of yourself to be a housewife and to be a mom. And that's where I agreed with. I was like, yeah, like I feel that same way. But then I kind of feel like she kind of hoodwinked me, because it's like she's like calling all the women and moms who feel this way, look how free you can be. And it's just like, record scratch, ma'am, sorry, no. Like, my rendition of freedom is me being able to like go camping, do a solo camping trip, and like, be by myself, where I don't have to like be at my husband or children's beck and call. Like, that's my vision of freedom. Not freaking sexing everybody in the freaking world just because I can. But it's like, that's what fantasies are for. I gotta hurry up and go because they're about to start getting really agitated with me. Okay, so the next book that I was able to read was Not About a Boy by Maya Hollis. I listened to this via Audible, and honestly, like, I felt like that really affected my reading experience. I didn't like the book. I gave it like 2.5 stars. I didn't really necessarily like the book. I thought the writer was great, but I think it was really melodramatic. It was like, if you were to listen to like a Lana Del Rey like record, like I haven't listened to like a full Lana Del Rey record, but I've heard some of her songs like way back when, and it's very melodramatic. It follows this young girl named Mel, I think. And she is having a tough time with how things in her life are at the moment. She found this guy named Hayden that she likes. He was a really great guy, but because of the previous relationship she was involved in and the toxicity of it all that she's grown accustomed to and grown comfortable with and dependent upon, when she's dealing with Hayden, it just really it's not adding up. It doesn't make sense. And so there is this feeling of wanting to create some sort of toxicity in order to feel comfortable and feel like this is normal for her. If we talk about her previous relationship, she used to date this guy named Darren, and he used to be a kind of person who did drugs in order to numb how he was feeling. That was his solution to the problems that he was facing. Now, mind you, they're like 17. It's supposed to be like a euphoria kind of like book. I've never seen the show, not gonna. They're teens and like whatever. I'm not even going to get into it. Whatever. But yeah, it's supposed to have that kind of like vibe to it. I picked this up because I absolutely love the cover. I thought it was really, really beautiful. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to read it. But yeah, so we followed this young lady, and she was a part of the foster care, and she finally has this family that is normal, and they love her and they accept her and they allow her to do her own thing, but it's really hard for her to accept that this is her normalcy. And so she finds ways to sabotage her life in order to feel like, okay, this is what it's meant. This is what my life is supposed to be. Not me like living in a freaking penthouse where my mom is like a famous stylist and I have money and I have friends who accept me and like me and I entertain them and they entertain me, and a boyfriend who is unproblematic and just wants and is in love with me for who I am and not who I'm trying to be or whatever. So she messes all of these things up. She finds out she has a twin sister and then she spirals. She's like, all right, that's it. This is too good to be true. It forces her to have to reflect on a past that she was able to disassociate from. So she's forgotten that she had a twin sister and everything just kind of like comes back and it's just too much for her. I didn't like the book because honestly, so Hayden is a really nice guy. He falls in love with her even though she's like, this is supposed to be casual. We're not supposed to be in like a relationship, like friends with benefits, and then that's it. But he can't help it. He loves her and he wants to protect her and he wants to be a good partner to her. But she doesn't want it. But like at the same time, she likes him. She's falling in love with him. And so like she's always around. He's like, okay, well, let's try. And she's like, no. But like she's still around and she still keeps going to him because she's become dependent and reliant on him. And so you're dealing with these mixed signals, and then like she starts taking drugs again and he's just like, I can't do this, you know, because he's going through his own personal situation. His parents are getting divorced. Now it might not amount to being in the foster care system, losing your twin sister, losing your mom, your boyfriend overdosed and passed after he broke up with you. So there's this guilt and there's a kind of blame there. So it might not amount to the problems that is stacked up on with you, but it's like he's going through something too. His parents are getting divorced, but it's like he doesn't get the same grace. So anyways, he's going through what he's going through. And then he's like trying to love someone who's literally trying to destroy herself in front of his eyes. And so he's like, can you please stop taking drugs? And she's like, okay, I'll stop. Which she lies. And then she ends up taking drugs again. And then he's like, you know, I can't do this. I can't be with you. Like, I can't see you do this. You lied to me. Like, I can't. So then she gets admitted into like a hospital where she wants to like get help. But somewhere along the lines, it's his fault. And that whole thing blew my mind. I was just like, are we freaking serious? Like, I could deal with the whiny, teenagey, I don't care, I'm so deep and understanding in my monologues, in my internal monologues. I'm so poetic in my internal monologues. But when it comes down to physical, human-to-human interactions and choices, I don't understand because I'm a teenager. I don't understand. This is the problem when you have adults writing for teenagers, because you have adult-sounding internal monologues. But then you have the teenagers, because they have to be teenagers, they make certain decisions and their actions don't align or don't mesh well with the internal poetic, like mature internal monologues. It just doesn't make any sense with me. And the thing is, like the writing is so overly poetic, drawn out. It just drags. Like when she finds out that her sister is her sister and she's looking at her on Instagram and she's looking at her pictures, she's going on and on and on about like, this isn't me. Like, I'm not looking at myself. I'm not looking at these are my eyes and these are my lips and this is my skin complexion, but this is not me. This is not me staring at me, because I know that I didn't take this picture and that smile doesn't belong to me. And I'm just like, all right, we get it. Anyways, so she was determined to self-destruct, and in the end, she realizes that it's not about a boy. And when I look at it from the perspective of Hayden, like, imagine you are a young man who falls in love with someone who doesn't really like want to be in a relationship, but they fall in love with you anyways, and they become dependent on you, and anytime they are self-destructing, that she's being brought to your house and you have to care for her, and you tell her to stop taking drugs, and then she's like, I'm gonna stop, but then she lies and she takes drugs again, and then you have to deal with her, but then you're also dealing with your parents and they're going through a divorce, and then you're trying to figure out like if your life was a lie this whole time, and so you're going through what you're going through, but then you have to suppress that because your girlfriend is going through something more important and it's more troubling, and so it needs to be prioritized. You try to get her to open up. She doesn't want to open up, but she's always around, and you try to show her in the best ways that you can that you are available and that you're there for her, and you try to be there for her in the best way you can, but it's not good enough because she wants to self-destruct. And then she takes drugs. You see her take drugs for the last time, and then you say, you know, I can't do it. And then she goes to get help. And then she speaks to a psychologist. And then the psychologist tells her it's not about a boy. And then she realizes it was never about you. She finds freedom in that. And she feels like she can conquer the world now. Because it was never about you. Which is like, it's great, obviously. But imagine being Hayden. Imagine being Hayden. Because essentially she kind of blames him, right? And then he apologizes to her for her being admitted into the hospital, even though she decides like she wants to go herself because she wants to get help finally. So he has to apologize to her for that. I read a book called Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, and I'm going to read what I wrote down because now I gotta go. Okay, so society has reached the stage in which not being of any use to the village means being condemned just for existing. So we follow this Japanese woman named Keiko Furukura. She is 36 years old. She's single, and she has been working at a convenience store for like 18 years. Since she was a little girl, her response to life just wasn't normal, and this is not okay. In a society that feeds on normalcy, Mrs. Furukura needs to be cured. Like a blessing from the heavens appears to Smile Mart, and where her parents' love and therapy couldn't fix her, the convenience store can. Miss Furukura is now fulfilled, contributing to society in the best way she could. That was until society tells her that this is no longer enough. She either needs to get married or find a better paying job. All Miss Furukura wants is to show her friends and family that she too can be normal. So she obliges by making a deal with a loser named Shiraha, who's more of an outcast than she is. The only difference between the pair is that Keiko has learned to mask her oddness better by assimilating with the people around her. For Shiraha, his program, prejudice, and victimhood mentality has caused him to distance himself from finding a way to mold into the village. He speaks about the village often, although he so desperately wants to. However, despite this deal, Mrs. Furukura feels like she's slipping further away from what brings her meaning, even though she is now finding acceptance. In the end, she realizes none of this matters. What's more worthwhile is the feeling she gets when she looks at what's being reflected back to her in the window of the convenience store, which is herself. So I said this book was funny and very entertaining. It asks the question of what exactly is normal and what does it look like exactly. What is a cog? And a cog, she mentions that in the book. I answered, a human whose purpose is to keep society functioning. A society is just the performance we upkeep in order to make ourselves appear like we're more than just animals. We have no true purpose other than to make one another convenient enough to feel accepted in the society, village, or culture we create. And because these ideas of normalcy fluctuates and differs within the societies, there is no true definition other than to give or perform what's demanded of a person. Normalcy is uniformed, it's genderless, it's gendered, it's influence and mimicry. It's all the same, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you can offer. Like the produce, it comes, it goes. It's in high demand and then it's out of stock and replaced. Normalcy is the hidden religion. It's convenient and it serves the public. It keeps things running 24/7. Anything outside of normalcy is odd and a disturbance and should be either disposed of or cured. And then I wrote a quote, as long as you wear the skin of what's considered an ordinary person and follow the manual, you won't be driven out of the village or treated as a burden. So then I wrote, seriously, what is normalcy? It's everything and nothing at all. So essentially, none of this matters. What truly matters is being a being with meaning, and that's as normal as one person can truly get. So I enjoyed this book. I thought it was super funny. I thought it was really great. And I think that oftentimes, like, a lot of people are upset with, like, Shiraha's character and how he kind of interferes with Keiko's life. But I think that it was essential. I think it was very necessary because without his presence and him in his disruption, Keiko is not able to get the answer that she seeks, right? Because in the beginning it's more about like, okay, how can I be as normal as possible? How can I satisfy my friends, my peers, my family in offering whatever it is that they desire in order for me to be accepted? How can I find their acceptance? And it gets to the point where she is willing to do whatever she can in order to obtain this quote unquote acceptance. But it's never enough because, like I said, that idea of normalcy, it fluctuates. For some people, it's about this, and for some people, it's about that. It's never enough. You have to constantly feed the machine. And so when Sharaha comes in and he completely disrupts everything, and he tries to help her obtain the things that she is needing to obtain in order to receive that fake, that so-called acceptance, it drives her to the point where she feels like she's losing herself and she gets into like some sort of depression. When she gets to the other side, she realizes that I'm enough. And I think that's very necessary. Sometimes disruption is necessary in order for a person to find solace and comfort and reach a realization that they are enough. So I appreciate it. I thought it was funny. I thought it was short and cute, and I enjoyed it. And this commentary on like normalcy and what that means for people who are not considered normal. They're more eccentric, they're odd, and they don't fit into that mold. But at the same time, it's this contradiction of what normalcy is, right? Like, what does that mean? Like, because we're just all animals, right? We just created a society that kind of masks it and makes us feel more superior than like the other animals. But it's like all of this, like, it's cute, right? This iPad is cute or whatever. But like, just like with the dungeon crawler Carl situation, if all of this stuff is like gone and like you are faced to have to deal with surviving and not dying, are we any better? Because like when we talk about back then, right? I don't know. I wasn't there, but I would think that it was tougher because why else would we create a society where it makes it easier? Because life is hard. Surviving is hard. But it doesn't feel that way anymore because, we have like Steve Jobs and freaking Bill Gates and, we have a society now. So now like we've replaced one hardship with another. And now this is more so, we're in a digital age now where it's more so about keeping up with the likes and the followers. And that equates to normalcy. That equates to currency, attention, attention equates to like currency and all that stuff like that. Followers and likes, comments, and subscriptions equates to some sort of validation, some sort of blue check that it's like, okay, I've made it to this threshold of society. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm having a good time. A book that I'm currently reading right now. Okay. I'm currently reading, my kids are going to be so annoyed with me. They're going to be like, Ma, we gotta go, bye-bye. Okay, so I'm currently reading A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. Wait, hang on. So, I remember I was at Barnes & Noble's one time and I saw this cover and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to know what this book is about. I love the cover. I am 36% of the way through of this book. Oh, also too, I ended up changing. I had the Paperwhite raspberry edition. I changed this to the color soft because honestly I need my highlight colors, and it was really hard for me to like look at like book covers when it was like in black and white. Like I was like squinting, I'm like, what book is this exactly? So now that the colors matter, okay, colors matter. So anyways, so yeah, so there's that. I'm 38% of the way through of this book. I'm enjoying it. We follow this odd couple. And their names are Remy and Alicia, and they are obsessed with this girl named Jen that used to work at this restaurant with Remy, and they're so insecure. Like, they're so insecure, and they're like socially awkward too, but they have a kind of relationship where their shared interest is Jen, and so they watch her on social media, and they kind of have a parasocial life. I think that's the word. Like, that's a new word I've been seeing thrown around. They have this parasocial kind of life where they look at Jen's social media account, and they use that in order to build this relationship with one another. And it's difficult for them when they're out in the real world because of their social awkwardness and their inability to connect with people and to make friends, because they're being perceived as odd. And so they create this world where Jen is like kind of like their monarchy or like model of like I don't know, it kind of feels like a religion. It's like a Jen religion kind of thing. They just view Jen in this way that kind of models what they aspire out of life or what they want out of life, because the real world, they don't necessarily fit in. But then they meet Jen in real life. Remy's known her, like he's been friends with, like he's been associated with her because they worked at the same restaurant, but then she had left. Well, the store closed, and so he holds on to these memories of Jen, so much so that when he dates Alicia, he gets her to love Jen as well, or the idea of Jen as well. So anyways, so they meet Jen in person at an Apple store, and she invites him and Alicia to this vacation that she's going on with her boyfriend and her friends. They stay at her boyfriend's parents' place in the Hamptons, I think. And we're slowly starting to see how, one, Jen is not all that great. And two, Alicia and Remy, you can see how I think their issue is they have such a low self-esteem, and they have such a low value of themselves that they can be easily manipulated and used as tools in order to do whatever kind of things that Jen or their friend or her friend Carla is trying to do. And it's kind of sad, it's really pathetic, but it's really funny. I think I'm at the point right now where I'm really enjoying people's self-destruct, or like this commentary of like human behavior and the hypocrisy of it all. I'm enjoying these things. I think it's really funny. So like everything that we so-called see when we're looking at social media or we're looking at social pages, these are all things that are created in order to create some sort of image. But then when you see that image in real life, it's not that great. And I think it's like just really funny. So I'm reading it, and it's starting to get kind of like psychological. It's like a psychological horror thing, because there's sounds that are being like heard, but then no one knows what's going on. So yes. Anyways, I am going to end this here because my kids are now in the house. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope I was able to say everything I needed to say, but if not, whatever. Yeah. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys were able to enjoy yourselves. Make sure you guys have a great day, afternoon, evening, night, morning, wherever you're watching in the world. Until next time, peace.